Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. And now get 15% off your first rental when you use the promo code WEEKEND. Call 347-721-3400 or email info@jmrny.com for details. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we're talking marketing for filmmakers and content creators. And to help me do that, joining me via Zoom, she is a marketing guru. She's the Vice President of Marketing and PR for Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment, Miss Lisa Papatzimas. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you for coming. And did I get your name right?
You got it perfectly. You got
Nailed
it
it.
perfectly.
Off
Nailed
to a
it.
good start.
There
Now
you go.
you're coming to us from the left coast, where
Yes.
the capital of the entertainment world. Unless you
hmm
ask New Yorkers, then we'll say we're the capital of the entertainment world. But I want to talk to you about marketing because we've talked a little bit in Clubhouse,
Right.
and I met you through Alex LeMay, who's been on the show. But
Right.
I want to get into this stuff because I'm really scared of marketing, I think. And I think a lot of other creators are too. And I want, hopefully you can like provide a little salve and help us out a bit. But first, I want to talk to you about you. So, how did you get started in show business? What is your origin story, so to speak?
So my origin story is in front of the camera. So I started out acting and modeling at a young age. Subsequently, did a lot of film and theater, mostly more theater, over in London, and then also modeled a lot as well. And then one day, my parents told me I needed to get a real job. And I absolutely adore the industry. And my parents are both business mindsets. So I started really looking at the business end of film. And I ended up going to USC for film school and theater. And from there, I started, I was still acting at the time, but I fell in love with directing. And I started directing a lot of theater. And from there, I just started understanding the whole aspect of what it is to run a show. And that made me get into the business end of it. So behind the camera. And also, too, at that time, I had more control as an actor to be producing and directing and putting myself in my own stuff. And then I opened up a business with my then husband, and that was a studio. And I learned from the ground up, how to make mistakes, how to like budget money and budget big, expenses. And that started my whole, travel into marketing because I understood the importance of marketing because marketing, without marketing, you have a product and it could sit there on the shelf for years and years or nobody can see it. So I started just really getting into publicity and marketing. And at that time, our budgets were practically nothing. So I learned how to use the internet back in the 2000s when Facebook came about, how to social media and utilize that for free, unlike today. And so that's, drove me into the marketing aspect. Plus, I also have a spidey sense on what is really going to work and what's really going to sell from our IP and looking at, scripts. I understand those, areas extremely well. And that's what landed me at Sonar. And then Sonar was acquired, and now I'm at CSSE. So, but I did stunts at New Line Cinema. I also worked at production houses like No Smoke and CFM in the commercial and advertising world as well. So I got to learn a lot about the ad world.
Tell me about your company and what you guys do.
Well, I come from the TV world. Now, with the acquisition over to CSSE, I'm having to jump back into the film world again because Screen Media deals with a lot of film. But they also now have purchased the Sonar library. So I know, uh, everything there is about how to market a TV show, how to make the best, product out there, make sure that the eyeballs are seen on it. So we do things like Mr. Mercedes, which is on Peacock, Amazon. We have Hunters on there. Disney Plus. We have Mr. Benedict Society, or not Mr. The Mysterious Benedict Society. On Disney Plus. And then, we've had great shows like Lonesome Dove and Taboo and The Sun and Shannara Diaries. Our Sonar has been the recipient of 268 Emmys. We've been nominated for 470. We have 56 nominations for Golden Globes and 16 wins. So we kind of know what we're doing in the TV realm.
With all of that, I mean, you have a unique perspective on kind of the landscape, or the content landscape. For instance, if you're on my side of the fence, if you're a content creator, what are people looking at from you to present?
Yeah, what I'm looking from content creators when they're presenting their pitch decks to me, or if they're pitching to us, you're always going to want to gravitate to a compelling story. That's primary, and that's the most important aspect, of course. But you also have to look at, is it a marketable, piece that can go out there, and will people go and sit and watch it? You can have a great story, but how do you execute it? How are you going to shoot it? Who's going to be in it? Who's your, for television, it's who's your showrunner, because that to us is the most important aspect. And then from there, it's like, will people watch right now? Because it's such an oversaturated market right now with all your SVODs, AVODs, your ESTs, your DVD buys and everything like that. You've got so many choices of where to go. How am I going to make sure I'm going to find that niche audience that's going to be dedicated towards our show and watch it? So that's, very important to me, is like, what is your demographics and will they sit down and watch?
One thing I've been hearing, and one thing I've been seeing a lot, and one thing I hear people kind of complaining about, is that we keep seeing it has to be a sequel or a remake, or it has to be known IP that either the company already owns and that maybe you have a new take on, or maybe you found some public domain property or something like that that you can revisit. Is that necessarily true, or is that just kind of is that the myth?
Well, I mean, there's truth to every single part of that. Yeah, it's a lot easier to get a known IP and be able to develop a show from that known IP, because that IP has a built-in audience already. So that's an easier thing for us to market. Is if I have a known author with, books that have sold millions, that is so much easier for me to make a television show out of it and then to market it, because I know I have that audience that's already built in, and that I can target really well when it comes time to marketing it. Original scripts are always good, but right now it's kind of hard, because I think sometimes Hollywood gets a little bit lazy, where it's like, oh, well, if it's a remake, we know it did well the first time, so now we're going to remake it. We know more people are going to come and watch the remake with the actors of today. It's no different like what you do in theater. Shakespeare is done over and over and over and over again because it works, because, he was a brilliant writer. And there's so many ways to redo his stuff. You don't have to always do it in Shakespearean Elizabethan times. So that's, why for centuries it's worked well. So I see that happening now, because, film's been around, what, 100 years now, or even more so. I think late 1800s is when some of the first little films were coming out. So now you're looking at products that have been done, 40, 50 years ago, where a younger generation isn't really going to watch it, because they aren't going to want to watch a black and white like Casablanca, which I think is the most amazing, exquisite film ever made. But my son necessarily isn't going to sit there and watch it. You would have to remake it with Chris Helmsworth or somebody else that they'll be wanting to sit there and watch it. And two, now it's like they watch everything on their phone. So you have to make it for the phone, because even though there's a huge TV, they're still going to watch it on their phone. So I can see where remakes, are always been wanting to be done, because it's just uh, a proven IP. Sequels, the same thing. It's a proven IP on what the film, if it's done well before, the television show is done well, we're going to do spin-offs on it, like Blackish, and how they've done several different spin-offs of it. Um, so it's really, I think sometimes it's the heads of the studios that are afraid to take a risk on something new. And that's why it's a little bit easier to tell investors or Wall Street, we're going to do this because they understand numbers.
When you're a creative person, you want to come up with new ideas. You want to come up with original uh, pieces of work. And, sometimes somebody has a take on something that is amazing, but it's very hard to, in that landscape, it feels like it's nearly impossible to figure out what the next whatever is. I asked Evan Shapiro about this, and his take was like, well, if you study this and you're a student of it and you put in your like 10,000 hours, you get to have like a sixth sense about it. But I don't think a lot of people have that. I don't think it's a common thing. So like if you do have something original and you're trying to present it, what does that have to look like, or what does that have to be like? Can it really be original?
Yeah, it's that's interesting because Evan and I have a lot of conversations on the media landscape and what's going on. And the thing is he's right. You have a spidey sense or a sixth sense about whether or not something's going to work. And for someone like me, it's like I'm bored right now because I have watched everything there is to offer on every single SVOD, AVOD, everywhere. I know every single show that's out there, and it's because I consume television in such veracity that I understand the landscape. And I've been doing it since I was, a teenager when my mom would yell at me to go outside and play, and I'd be sitting there watching MTV going, oh my God, this is amazing. They're little tiny stories, because this was in the 80s, not how MTV is now, but how MTV was in the 80s. Um, so, I understand the behaviors of human beings and what they want to consume and what they'll gravitate towards. And I can tell you from a deck whether or not a show will be successful. From script, I don't have to really read. I look at the deck really, and I know visually if it's going to work. A play is different. Play I'm going to read because it's a completely different medium. But and I'm not negating writers because it is the most important thing. I'm just letting you know that as an executive, we look at the decks first, development, and they'll look at the script after we look at the deck. Um, but how do you know if you have something that's new and exciting? Um, Gosh, it's such a great question because we are hashing out a lot of old stuff right now, and I think it's in a sense it's comfort food for the world because of what we're going through pandemic wise. You want comfort. You want to know that you can sit down and you can watch Loki and you know what Loki's about, and you're seeing the transformation of his character into being this nice person now, and that gives you comfort because you've watched him for so long. I just think, because of the pandemic, we really want comfort. We want to be comforted right now.
Even some things that are getting sort of resurrected now. Like I know that there's a new Dune coming out,
Oh yeah.
and I think Denis Villeneuve is a tremendous director, and he did Blade Runner 2049, which I thought was a masterpiece, and I was a fan of Blade Runner, and I was like anxious to go see
Right.
this movie. Unfortunately, I was in the minority because Blade Runner was a cult following, and unless you really were
Right.
into it, you that movie was not going to be a hit. But they still let him make Dune, and I'm kind of wondering the same thing. Like, is Dune that kind of big budget, big four quadrant kind of movie?
It's interesting because we actually have the Dune rights, right? So Sonar does. And so we did Dune with John McAvoy and Susan Sarandon. I think it was 1990s or something like that. So we've relaunched that off because we knew Dune was coming out a year ago. We knew Dune was going to be resurrected. And so with that, we piggybacked off of that to give new life to the old Dune, franchise. Uh, I don't know. I mean, the actors that they have in Dune right now are going to probably compel, the 18 to 30-year-olds to go and see it, as opposed to the Dune with Sting, So because that to me was, yeah, I'm going to go watch Sting because I absolutely love him. So they're appealing to that generation right now, not so much you and my generation, but to the younger generation to come out and watch it and then get into that franchise.
What's interesting, what you talked about before is, knowing what's going to, kind of getting a sense of things and talking about you can tell from a deck, right? So I think probably where a lot of creators fall down is they might be able to write a great script or they might be a great filmmaker, but they probably are not great at creating pitch decks. If you had like, your top five tips or something like that for creating a killer pitch deck, can you do that? Do you have those off the top of your head?
To me, the best pitch deck that is out right now in the past 5 years is Montauk, which is Stranger Things. And I think that pitch deck and their Rip-O-Matic really summed up the whole series and didn't really say much um, copy-wise within the deck. It just had the images that were so needed and the feel and the vibe for that uh, time era and what the story was about. So to me, the most important thing, of course, is the imagery. How you have the first slide is extremely important. The next thing is the cohesiveness with the color tones throughout the whole deck. Uh, Third thing would be your font. Um, Next would be your synopsis. And then fifth would be your character descriptions by not using any actors that you think would be right for the role, by using editorial type of images for those characters. That's, the movement and how it's going right now. And if you are a writer and you don't know how to do a pitch deck, well, then there's lots of companies you can hire that can, because that's, an important tool right now.
I'm asking this also for myself because we're working on a deck for a project that we have, and we're also working on a reel for it. And you mentioned Stranger Things, so they used, and I'm saying this for people who might not be familiar with this, but like, so they used like a rip reel for that.
Right, a Rip-O-Matic. They did do that.
So can you explain that what that is for somebody who might not know?
So that's like Rip-O-Matic. So it's basically, you're ripping away scenes from other films and editing it all together into one cohesive trailer, basically, that basically says everything about your film. And you can go ahead and utilize this as long as you're not selling or putting it up on YouTube or anything like that. It's completely an internal use that you will send off to a studio or to financiers or to production company.
This would be as opposed to like shooting something and showing like scene for something like that.
To be quite honest, I'm not one for you going out and shooting your own sizzle, because the thing is you're going to probably not have the best quality actors in order to do it, and it's going to come across as this is who you want for this particular series. And when we acquire an IP, we'll have our own, ideas of who we think should be attached and who we should put into it. So by doing that, it's generally, to me, I'd rather have you put the money into a great Rip-O-Matic than to put, your money into a self-produced sizzle reel.
Once the company, say, buys a show or they decide to pilot a series, for instance, what is your relationship with the creator and how do you work with people?
When production starts, generally, may go on set. My whole thing is I'm geared to now, what assets can I utilize from your shooting that I can use to market? I don't have any say on, is the storyline going right? Is this going right? That's in production and developments area, and I leave it to my associates in order to deal with that, because they know exactly what they're doing. I know what I need as far as assets go. I need unit photography. I need, key artwork. I'm going to be talking to you about all of those necessities, because the thing that's really hard right now, and I've come across it for a few films that we are distributing, where they don't have those. And then you're leaving it up to whatever SVOD or AVOD that we sell it to in order to create those assets. And that is very risky, because then your film isn't going to be seen or your television show isn't going to be marketed correctly because you don't have the assets. And that's also the trailer too. Those are part of the things that I'm looking at, and that's generally upon completion. But during the shooting, if we happen to, be a co-pro with you or an international co-pro, then I do make sure that, there's unit photographers there that can take the necessary assets that I need in order to market a show.
That's really helpful, actually, because I don't think a lot of people know that stuff, and you need to be thinking of it while you're making the thing and not afterward.
Right.
Get,
Screen grabbing is not good.
right,
Screen grabbing sucks, to be
right.
quite honest.
So you want to
So,
get those
yeah,
shots with, your stars and stuff, and maybe take
yeah.
time out to have like a photographer or somebody on set to get all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, you need to do it even if you have an iPhone. If you're an independent filmmaker and you don't have the budget, even if you have an iPhone and you sit there and you snap shots, because the iPhone 12 right now takes great photos. So, and of key turning points of the film that, you got to think of, this will look good in a, in on the carousel, or it'll be good in social media. Evan will always say that your next person that you hire is a social media expert to be on set, and I do have to agree with that, because that's generally how you're going to market the film a lot, is through social media right now.
One of the things I think a lot of creators come up against is the sort of creative spirit and freedom to create against this machine mentality and like selling or selling out or fear of that kind of restriction, or just like I've got to change my vision in order to fit what some marketing executive thinks, kind of thing. I want to kind of like feel good about that because I know it's part of the process. Do you have any advice on that?
You have to be thinking of marketing before you even start shooting. That has to be so much of a part of what you as a filmmaker have to start thinking about. We're not necessarily going to say, okay, change this aspect of the show because it's not going to work marketing wise. I still believe, and I think Sonar very much believes in the filmmaker's vision. So I'm very much there for the filmmaker's vision. What I am there for is to help get your vision to be seen by people. So that's my main thing, is like making sure that the show actually gets seen. And right now everybody's so saturated with so many images and so many things coming through. It's like, how do you stand out in this noise? And so, yes, I'm going to need certain assets from you. And we are a machine of great minds at my business that know how to market out. And we have to be able to have the tools in order to do that. So by you not giving us, certain assets, you're basically chopping off our hands in order to help you market your film. So, I don't think a filmmaker has to be worried um, that we're going to change the whole vibe of the film. Yes, there are stories where, there are different endings that have to come because this ending didn't work and we need to change it so that the audience enjoys it. Or, you've got, tons of stories that have changed completely, like Pretty Woman. I don't think Pretty Woman's story would have really, worked how it was in its original essence in the beginning. And then that's, where development comes along, and you are developing and you are collaborating with now an entire group of people. And, I just think that's part of the process now.
I think that the other thing that people on the creator side forget that is that marketing people are also creatives. And a
Oh
lot of them
yeah.
come from writing backgrounds, so like you come from an acting background, directing background. There is an empathy there, but at the end of the day, if you make this thing and nobody sees it, who cares?
And it is, it's a big machine. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how intense it is to work at a studio. It's not just about filming and being on set and creating. I mean, those are great things. I love that part about the business, is being able to be on set and be part of that vibe. I mean, that's like fantastic. But, we have development where we develop things for years and then we shoot it, and then we have it where it's in the can, and now we've got to like market it out. But it's not even just marketing. It's like you've got, deliverables and operations, and you got business affairs. You have so many elements and moving pieces to getting a film out. There's partnerships that have to be developed with, brands. There's, tons of, things going on in order to make somebody be able to watch a great piece of work on an SVOD or an AVOD. It's a business. This is a business. The bottom line is the dollars. If we're, developing a project and it's a $10 million per episode project, well, we need to make $10 million or $20 million each time it airs. And that comes from the advertisers. So yes, at times we have to appease to the advertisers as well, because the advertisers are looking at it going, well, I don't know if I want to put my commercial in during that, and we need that AdSense.
And maybe that's the healthy attitude. Is like look at the marketing people as partners and people who are going to help your show be successful, so that you can get money to make more shows or make more movies or
Right.
whatever it is you do.
I know you said about PR and how do you, we announce, and we do a lot of, it's strategically placed inside of deadline, when we're going to announce an acquisition, when we're going to announce a new person coming on, because we still need to pander to Hollywood. We still need to pander to CAA, ICM, and Dover. We need to be able to let them know these are the projects that we're doing, so that they bring more of their talent on over. And I'm lucky enough that the shows that Sonar has produced are top quality shows. So I'm very blessed. I shouldn't say lucky, but blessed that I'm able to work with amazing filmmakers. So, it makes my job very happy that I get to promote really good content.
All right, I'm gonna wrap up, but so if people want to find you online, or maybe get in touch with you, or I know that you do a lot on Clubhouse, where can they find you on the web?
So I do a lot on Clubhouse. So there's, just look me up on Clubhouse. The best way to always get a hold of me is through LinkedIn, because I will respond on those, because that way I get to know who you are and I know, what your background is. And I find that the best way. With social media, even though I handle all of the social media for our stuff, I don't necessarily have any public accounts on social media other than on Twitter, which I rarely am on right now. But the best thing is through LinkedIn.
Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, no rest for the weekend podcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And now you can follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/Get Behind the Rabbit. Once again, I want to thank my guest, Lisa Papatzimas, and I pronounced her name right again, and, as well as our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.